Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
We are joined in the studio now by a man who does not have a working class accent. Barrister and broadcaster Andrew Eborn. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm not bad, mate. You all right? Nice to hear you, as they say. It's always a joy. It's a joy to be back.
Good to have you on board. So, a couple of legal stories from which I think we can benefit from your expertise. Now, this is going massive all over the world on social media, and it is indeed an intriguing saga. We're talking about the sort of smash hit real-life Hollywood drama that is this volcanic feud between the actress Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. Baldoni starred in and directed a film called It Ends With Us. It's actually about domestic violence. And the co-star was the actress Blake Lively. She's married to Ryan Reynolds. Now, after this film, Blake Lively went public and sort of accused Baldoni of sexually harassing her and behaving in an unacceptable way on the set. Baldoni says it's outrageous. You know, how dare you taint my reputation like this? So they've been swapping sort of nasty words in public for some time. Well, the latest twist, Andrew, is that Baldoni is now suing Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds for $400 million. Baldoni alleges that this showbiz power couple and their publicist, someone called Leslie Sloan, tried to hijack his film and made false claims against him of sexual harassment. And earlier, before this, Blake Lively accused Baldoni of attempting to destroy her reputation. Where is this heading, do you think?
Well, you say it all ends with us. It doesn't. It all ends with lawyers.
It ends with the reality. Like everything. It ends with the lawyers.
Everything. And they always say a good reputation is worth more than silver or gold. It's all about this, but it started actually with accusations about behaviour on set.
Yeah, the Baldoni's behaviour.
Exactly. And all sorts of litigation. The figures are eye-watering because there was reports about what went on and PR firms saying that they're going to bury Blake's sort of reputation as a result of it, Blake's reputation, and they got involved and there were smear campaigns and so on and so forth. So it's all to do with defamation, and he's also gone as far as sort of suing the New York Times, who reported some of the allegations.
Yeah, for now that you'll agree with me here. I mean, I know something of journalistic law. That lawsuit, that legal action by Baldoni against the New York Times, which all the New York Times did was to report what was in Blake Lively's lawsuit against Baldoni. That legal action is going nowhere. That's fair.
Well, you say that, and there's always an argument for the things. What Baldoni is arguing is that the bits that they picked were out of context and so on and so forth. No, but that's what happens. It is a nuance.
Yeah.
So if they're twisting it on that sort of basis, you're right. If you're simply reporting the facts and so on and so forth, but if you're repeating a defamatory statement, then you yourself as a publisher will be liable for the defamation. What's happening on this sort of basis? He's basically come out as a big campaigner for women's rights. He's talking about toxic masculinity and trying to get rid of all that sort of stuff. So the damage to him and his reputation is massive. He's been dropped by his agency as a result of these various accusations and so on and so forth. But the figures in the States are always huge. So to say you're suing for $400 million, you know, it's incredible. And the way that they calculate this, look, what is the damage? The basic principle in law is to put you in the position you would have been in if the defamatory statements had not been made. So basically, if he's going to argue about his career and so on and so forth. But the fact that it's all Hollywood and they've got some of the same characters as the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard cases, the PR firms behind that, the Sultans of Spin, as I call them, they're working on that sort of premise. It's all going to come out, and I predict where it's going. It's going to be pages and pages of tabloid stories for several months.
Yeah, and so Blake Lively alleged during the filming of It Ends With Us. Baldoni, as I said earlier, was not only her co-star, he also directed the film. That, for example, when she was in her trailer getting changed, he would burst in with his mates, with his buddies, so they could see her in a state of undress. He, of course, denies this.
Yes.
So she set this ball rolling with these kind of explosive allegations against Baldoni, and he has counterattacked in a massive way.
Yes.
Which is obviously, as you say, suing the New York Times. Now this $400 million lawsuit. We can talk fairly freely here. We're not under American jurisdiction. Do you think perhaps he... I've got to be slightly careful. Could you conclude that possibly Mr. Baldoni doth protest too much?
Well, I always say that the best form of defence is offence.
Yes.
So you work on that sort of principle. It all depends on the evidence, is the honest answer in all of these situations. The reports from that sort of side, apart from bursting into her trailer while she was breastfeeding, was one of the issues. There was apparently pictures which are shown of naked people. There were scenes which took place which she hadn't authorised. So
there were people are watching. By the way, that goes on all the time. Well, it used to when I was there. The directors would get their mates in, if there were nude scenes and things like that. But I mean, one had thought, or would have thought that, in our new woke era, Me Too and all that sort of activity had ended. But according to Blake Lively, it hasn't.
Well, and that's the thing. So looking on that sort of basis, so they talked about having an intimacy coordinator on set and so on and so forth. She sat down. The reason Ryan's involved as well is they talked about the artistic side, looking at the script and working on that sort of basis, changing some of the scenes. So this is what they're complaining about on that sort of basis. And Taylor Swift was involved as well. She was apparently shown a particular scene and said, I prefer her version of it than the other one. So she was brought in on that sort of basis.
Well, you have to do what Taylor says. I mean, for God's sake, if she preferred that scene it is.
Yes.
But also these publicists are involved, and Blake Lively said that Baldoni used his publicists. She alleges this. We're not saying this is a fact, folks. This is what these two are accusing each other of. None of this has been proved. We've got to be careful here.
Yes.
But she says that Baldoni used his publicists, his PRs, as we call them in the business, to smear her reputation.
Yes.
He is now saying that both Blake and Ryan Reynolds used their publicists to smear him.
And there's quotes, and they say alleged quotes, so you're absolutely right to frame it in that way. We can bury anybody, was one of the quotes on these sort of things, when they have these smear campaigns. And actors nowadays, they're brands. And so the reputation, they're worth millions. So the knock-on effect when it's damaged, and obviously with one of the Hollywood's power couples, with Ryan Reynolds as well thrown into the mix, they're looking at that sort of basis, and that's why it's so important for these big studios. But this is why he's come out fighting, and all of the stuff will come out in evidence. We've seen some of the text, alleged texts and so on and so forth, which have been printed in the newspaper. Baldoni's turning around and saying that's not all of it, it's not in context. So we're going to see the rest of it, and it's going to be ugly.
It's like I say, it's better than any movie.
Oh,
it
absolutely.
Really is. It really is. Now let's talk again carefully a little bit about Blake Lively.
Yes.
Now, a friend of a friend over there in LA, in poor fire-ravaged LA.
Yes, awful.
She's a Scandinavian journalist, and for the what they call the opening of this film, they call them junkets.
Yes.
So I've been to many. Basically, the studios organise these junkets. So basically, loads of journalists will turn up, and the stars turn up usually in a hotel somewhere, and through the day they'll conduct all these interviews. Sometimes the poor stars have to do 30 interviews in a day, but it's a good way of getting global publicity for the movie in one day flat. Now, at one of these junkets, this Scandinavian girl, there were rumours around, or I think it might have just been announced, that Blake Lively was with child. She was pregnant, and so this Scandinavian girl, I think it was for a TV interview, quick TV interview, she said, congratulations on your baby bump. And Blake Lively went off on one.
Yes,
you know, sort
apparently,
of basically, you know, felt that this was, you know, an intrusion on her privacy, and we're here to talk about the film, not whether or not I'm pregnant and all that. So that Scandinavian, the journalist, a female, she said, you know, she went public and just said, you know, I was bullied here, you know, and they humiliated me, and I just asked a perfectly, you know, normal, civil question. So I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, Blake Lively. Let's put this. She's one of those people who doesn't suffer fools gladly. Would that be a diplomatic way of putting it?
And it is interesting. I read that report and read all sorts of other reports as well on that sort of basis. And some of the allegations about what was said on set was about her weight and whether she was carrying too much weight and so on and so forth. So clearly very sensitive about it. There are always different ways that you can spin these stories. And as you know, and you work on that sort of basis, in the same way as Amber Heard was vilified in the press and so on and so forth. And that's why I say some of the PR people, the sultans of spin, behind the scenes, they will twist and turn and so on and so forth. And some of the emails, alleged text, which went between the people, are quite horrendous about burying and basically vilifying people in this sort of situation. It will come out in the wash. It will come out with lots of lawyers. I always say it's the lawyers who benefit most in these actions. And that's what's going to happen. But it's the evidence. That's the key thing to do.
Have you ever worked in America, legally?
I work. My wife's American, so I've worked around the world. So a lot of what I do, but I mainly specialise in intellectual property. So that's why I sell rights around the world on that sort of basis. But yes, it's interesting. The lawyers over there are a slightly different breed to the lawyers over here.
Yeah, mostly they tend to be much wealthier.
Well, you look at the figures, and it's exactly 400 million. And I always talk about litigation. There's that classic cartoon, Jay Bright, from the 18th century, which depicts litigation as a cow with the word litigation on it, and you get the plaintiff pulling the horns, the defendant pulling the tail, and the lawyers milking it, because they're the ones who make all the money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know, you know, the only winners here will be the lawyers.
And it's also the reputational damage, because what comes out, the dirt on all sides. You shine a spotlight on people's lives. That's what they're now going to be doing. They're going to be looking at all these old emails, digging up, as you say, interviews with Swedish journalists who said this and so on and so forth. And if you remember the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp case, which was wall-to-wall television, everybody was transfixed because they loved all the dirt. And that's what's going to happen.
Well, you know, I've got a lot of experience having, you know, been a journalist in LA for the best part of 10 years and gone to a lot of these junkets, interviewed a lot of stars. And these publicists, you know, they're the scourge of journalism there. So basically you'll be going into some star, some actor or actress who's just filed for some sensational divorce, and as you go into the room with the actor or the actress sitting there, the publicist will say, "You're not allowed to ask about the divorce." And you go, "Well, it's the only question in town." And I'll tell you, Blake Lively's next movie, all the journalists will be banned from asking her about Baldoni, Justin Baldoni, and same for him. You won't be able to ask him about Blake Lively, probably for the rest of their lives.
Well, I think that's probably the reality. But I reckon there's a movie just in the same way there was behind the scenes.
Do you know what? They probably will make a movie of this.